don't think we have. All right, so welcome to everyone that is getting to join us tonight. You are joining us for the Ohio Valley Solar and EV Charger Co-op. We will get started in just a couple moments. We're going to give everybody a chance to get logged in. So we'll get started in about 2 or 3 minutes, depending on how we see everybody trickling in here. If you would like to take a moment to enter in the chat, like the general area you're from, this co-op does reach 3 states. So if you could at least include a state for us, that would be super helpful, so that we know which of our slides to cover the most with you tonight, so that we can try to make this as relevant as possible. Welcome, Carl. Thanks for joining us this evening from Morgantown. Hopefully you guys had beautiful weather there today.
Did you have beautiful weather, Mariah?
We did. It was a very nice, warm, 85-degree day. We seem to be in the middle of a I will get to water my plants spell every night, because we're not getting any rain and we don't have any predicted for the next week. Great for my solar, bad for all my tomatoes.
That's
How was
the
your
same for
weather?
us. Yeah, same for us. Warm and no rain. I don't have tomatoes, but I have strawberries, and they're finishing up.
Yeah, my lettuce, I think I already might have toasted, and my tomatoes are not looking very happy, so I'll go water them again this evening. Trying not to bake them, so I keep watering them twice a day, but I don't know if I'm winning yet or not. It was a great day for solar production though. So
Oh, I believe it.
we'll go ahead and get started, because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. So tonight, you have 2 different states worth of staff with you. So I'm Mariah Williams. I'm from Columbus, Ohio now. My original hometown is Clarington, Ohio, which is in Monroe County, which is one of our rural counties being covered in this co-op, in southeastern Ohio. And then we have Monica.
Hi,
She's
everybody. I'm Monica Carey. I'm the Pennsylvania Program Director for Sun, and I actually live in Pennsylvania in Lancaster County. So kind of, many hours drive from the area for this co-op, but I'm very happy to be with you tonight.
all right. So as I'd introduced before, but we'll reintroduce it here. This is the Ohio Valley Solar and EV Charger Co-op. It'll be centered around Wheeling, West Virginia, covering into Pennsylvania and Ohio, as well as those northern panhandle counties of West Virginia. So these are some of the families and farms that have previously went solar with us through co-ops. So a bit of housekeeping for the evening. Please have your audio on, but if you could hold off on using your microphone for now and submit your questions through the chat, it makes it easier for everybody to be able to hear us. And then this webinar is being recorded, and we will share a link to everybody who RSVP'd. If you do join us tonight, you can catch up on anything you might miss or want to see a second time, because I know we're super entertaining. Or if you didn't miss it if you did miss it and you're wanting to listen later, that's probably what you're doing now that you've received that link. You can also use this to share with a friend that might be interested that may not be able to attend an evening session. We have a lot of great partners for this co-op. So we've got the West Virginia Environmental Council, the Clean Air Council, the Center for Coalfield Justice, Drive Electric Southeast Ohio, the West Virginia Electric Auto Association, the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council, New Jobs Coalition, West Virginia Rivers, Morgantown Green Team, Rural Action, and the Physicians for Solar Social Responsibility from Pennsylvania. So great partners that are helping us to promote this co-op and support you in going solar. So what is Solar United Neighbors? We are a vendor neutral national nonprofit, and we help people to go solar. We join together and fight for energy rights. So anytime we're not running one of these solar co-ops, you'll find us working on other advocacy efforts in most of our states. We're working on community solar policies within the state houses to try to get it so that people that do not have appropriate rooftops or do not have the financial means by which to go solar on their own home can still reap the benefits of having solar available to them. And I see that we've got a couple more attendees that have logged in. So if you guys would like to list off what state you're from or what area of the state that you're from, we would really appreciate it, as we do have 3 states being covered: Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia through this co-op. So we're just trying to track where everybody's from so that we can make sure we bring you the correct information. So Sun got started in 2007 when Anya's son saw Inconvenient Truth, and he came home and was like, "Mom, I want to go solar." And she quickly figured out that it wasn't quite as easy of a process as she thought it would be. And whenever she was like, "If we're going to figure this out for us, let's figure it out for everybody." And so her son and his friend went door to door, knocking on homes in their neighborhood and said, "Hey, we're thinking about going solar. Do you want to go solar?" And 50 homes ended up going solar in that neighborhood of Mount Pleasant in the Washington, D.C. area. And once she had done it for herself, then everybody else started approaching and saying, "Hey, if you figured out solar for your home and through all the red tape and all of the figuring out which company to go with, how about we have a co-op too?" And so then in 2011, DC Sun was started, and now we are in 11 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. So we have a national impact where we have helped over 7,800 families to go solar, which is equal to 64 megawatts worth of solar. And we've saved over 900,000 tons of carbon emissions. One of the things that we like to work on top of the solar co-ops is working for equity. That looks a little bit different throughout each of the regions that we work in. But here in the Ohio Valley, some of the things that we would like to see, and I'm sure you would as well, is replacing those coal ash ponds with solar on facilities. We're not looking to use up, beneficial farmland. We're looking at changing those coal-fired power plants into small solar arrays that are on personal farms. And we're looking at changing those fracking explosions that we might all be too familiar with, like this one that's pictured in the bottom right corner, that was in Captina Creek in Powhatan Point, Ohio, back in 2018, and make sure that instead those people are able to gain their energy working for them on their rooftops. And that way they're not paying into those large fossil fuel corporations. They're, benefiting from it more directly. So we'll cover several things today, and we're going to get started with how do solar co-ops work. Then we're going to dive into some solar technology, as well as hearing about solar economics. And our first section up is how solar co-ops work. So why might you want to join a solar co-op? It'll help to get you the best value on installation. You get support throughout the process and even afterwards. You get to connect with fellow solar enthusiasts. I mean, just look around the Zoom room tonight and you know that there are 4 other people here at least that are in your region that are interested in solar just like you are. And you get to become part of a growing solar movement. So the solar co-op process works over the course of several months. So this program here for the Ohio Valley just launched at the start of May. So you're in on the very leading edge of it. Right now, we're doing the learn, sign up, and spread the word phase. So you're here tonight learning. We have these free solar co-op info sessions throughout the program. Some of them will be in person. Some of them will be online like this. You get to sign up online to become a co-op member. It's free. There is absolutely no obligation to actually go solar with us. We're just helping to inform people about the process and how they can do it maybe a little bit easier than by themselves. And then we invite you to spread the word to your neighbors and friends that there is a co-op going on in the area. Whenever we get a larger group of people, we typically see a little bit better pricing for the solar. So we always encourage everybody to bring a friend so that we can get those better deals for you. Coming up on June 22nd, we'll have what we call the selection committee, which is when all the co-op members have the opportunity to volunteer to join us one evening, and we will go over every one of those bids that we received from the solar installers in your area. And then at the end of the evening, the members will vote on which one of those bids they want to use. And then we have the steps after that are we'll continue to take signups for the co-op. They just won't get an opportunity to vote on the installer. They'll already have that selected for them, but anybody can join through October 30th. You'll get an individual proposal from that installer directly made for you with the pieces and the parts that you want in it. You'll sign the contract that's directly with the installer. That is not with us. We do not install or sell you anything. We're just there to support you. You guys will have your installations, and then somewhere probably at the start of next year or into the spring, we'll have a big party where we'll get everybody together and celebrate all of the solar that was installed through this program. And just a little bit more to help clarify on who picks the installer, the co-op members do. So we have a selection committee that's made up of co-op members that they're just volunteers from the group. Like, you yourself can volunteer if you wanted to see those bids and talk about them with everybody. Whenever you do sign up for the co-op, there are different criteria we have you select and tell us what's important to you. So that might be price, that might be a warranty, that might be that you want, union made, American made panels. You can fill in and check all those types of things off. And then we will make a nice little spreadsheet to put all that information together to be at the fingertips of the selection committee. And then you get to join the co-op and customize your proposal. So that wraps up this first section. I'm looking at chat, but I don't see any questions about this. As we go along, just as a reminder, if you have any questions about each section, let us know.
So I'm going to take over from here for this next section, at least part of it, and we're going to get started in talking about what solar technology comprises of. And so when we say solar, it's really a shorthand. Solar here means solar photovoltaic, which is the technology that converts solar energy into electricity that you can use in your home. So at the very heart of a solar system is a solar cell. So that's that little blue square off to the left, kind of at the center of the solar module. This is still predominantly silicon technology. And so everything else that goes into that module is really there to make sure that your solar cells have a long lifetime, 25 years, and that they're protected from the elements. So these panels are going to be outside. They're going to be seeing the rain and wind, snow, hail. And so there is tempered glass. There is a polymer on the cells themselves. And that's really there to protect the solar cells. So then you can take solar module and string them together, and that's when you have something called a solar array. So when thinking about attaching the solar panels to your house, there are different ways you can do this, kind of depending on the type of roof you have. So here you can see an asphalt or composite shingle roof. So it's on an angle. So this installation is pretty simple. The installer is going to drill holes through your shingles down to the rafters. They're going to make sure that it's a really secure connection. And then they're going to fill up that penetration point with a silicone sealant. And you can see those metal squares on top of the shingles. That's called flashing. And that goes up between your shingles to make sure that any water that comes down on your roof over those penetration points just shears away entirely. So that keeps the penetration really waterproof, makes sure that it's really well secured to your home. So this is kind of the most common way we're still seeing solar be installed on homes. Mariah, do you want to go to the next slide? Uh-oh.
I've got flipped through a couple different slides there. Are you seeing those?
No, oh, wait, there we go. Okay, I'm seeing the standing seam metal roofs. So in this situation, so metal roofs are great because they have a 50-year lifetime. So Mariah, are you presenting now?
No. Are you
Okay.
still there?
I'm still here.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, it's a bad internet day. Okay, so I don't know exactly where we left off. The last slide I saw was the metal standing seam roof. Yeah.
Can you see the slide has changed now? No.
I'm seeing the ballasted system.
Okay.
Okay, I'll talk about the ballasted system then. So in this situation, this is a flat roof. And so this is going to be more common for maybe a townhouse or a commercial size system. So the co-op is open to nonprofits and to small businesses. But so if you have a flat roof, there are a couple of different ways to mount the solar panels. One of the nice ways to do it is through what's called a ballasted system. This is non-penetrative, so no holes being drilled in your roof, which means no chance of leaks. But you can see it's simply weighting down the solar panels. You can see those the blocks on the ends. Those are weighting down the whole racking for the solar panels. That way, they're not going to budge, but you also don't have to drill through the roof. It's a really nice kind of clean installation setup for a flat roof. Okay. So in thinking about what makes a good roof for solar, there are really 4 criteria that you need to think about. The first is your roof orientation. So we're in the Northern Hemisphere. You want your roof to be facing south. That's how it's going to see the most sun. due south is the best, but it is not the only option. You can really get away with anything from west to east, as long as it's kind of southerly facing. Secondly, you are going to be looking for little or no shading, and that's going to be from, nearby trees. If you have other buildings or structures, farms nearby, you just want to have an idea of how much shade is actually covering your roof at any given moment. And that's something that your installer is going to do, like really rigorous shade analysis on your roof. And then the third criteria is having enough space to mount the panels. So the industry standard is about 250 square feet, and that's contiguous. So you really do want it to not be broken up by like chimneys, dormers. Every time you have one of those disconnects, that is going to cause little additions of inefficiency in your solar system. And then larger than that is great, but 250 square feet is kind of the minimum size that most installers are going to be willing to work on. And then finally, sometimes the most important criteria is having a new-ish undamaged roof. So ideally, you're going to be putting up your solar system and leaving it up there for the lifetime. So that's 25 years. Now, asphalt and composite shingle roofs, their lifetime is about 30 years, which is why, because it's the most common, we do recommend that roof be pretty new, usually less than 10 years old, and you do want it to be in good condition. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you'll have to have the solar system taken down, replace the roof, and then put the solar back up, which can be an additional, $2,000 to $8,000. And for a lot of people, that's just a no-go. So that's why I said earlier that if you have a metal roof, that's really great because that has a 50-year lifetime. So it gives you more wiggle room in your solar's lifetime. Now, if you don't have a good roof for solar, or you just decide you don't want to do a roof mounted solar system, you can do a ground mounted system. And so in this case, there are some pros and cons with ground mounted solar compared to rooftop solar. So one of the main detractor to ground mounted solar is that it is almost always more expensive. And this is because you need to build that structure to hold the solar, as well as pour concrete to make sure that it's stable. And then there's going to be trenching to bury the power lines to carry the power from the panels back to your house. So that's additional cost to the system. The benefits to ground mounted solar is that you can actually, you're not limited by the pitch and orientation of your roof. You can really mount them whichever direction makes the most sense to absorb the most sunlight. So that's really helpful, as well as the fact that there's all this air circulating around the panels themselves, which you don't get when they're mounted almost flush to your roof. So with all that circulation, the panels are actually cooler, and at cooler temperatures, they run more efficiently. So in general, you're just going to have a higher efficiency, higher producing solar system with a ground mounted solar system than if it's roof mounted. But again, it is probably going to cost you a little bit more. So after your solar panels absorb sunlight, they're going to generate direct current, or DC. Now, your house actually uses alternating current, or AC. So you have an inverter after the panels that's going to switch from DC to AC. The inverter also does a calculation for each panel or for the string of panels, that tells you at this amount of sunlight, this amount of shade, here's the maximum power you can get out of it. So it optimizes power during the day. It also connects to the internet so that you can monitor your power production throughout the day. And that's a really good way of knowing, like, if you have a panel that's not working, if something came disconnected or loose. So the inverter is really important. It's kind of the computerized brain of your system. So there are a few different options for inverters. I'm not going to go super in depth in any of these. It's not really important for you to know about them or have a preference. It's just that your installer is probably going to offer one of these types, and they'll explain why it's going to work for you. But for the string inverter, that is most commonly used for ground mounts and for commercial systems. The other two are a string inverter with DC optimizers and a microinverter. So the DC optimizer and the microinverter clip right onto the solar panels themselves. And like I said before, the installer is going to basically have one, maybe two options. So this is really just to help you understand that this is the next step after the solar absorbs by the panel. So after the inverter switches your current to alternating, it's going to feed directly into the general energy mix of your electrical panel. It's usually a simple connection. For most homes, there's not really going to be a need for an upgrade or for, you know, an additional like sub panel to be added or anything like that. But in some cases, you will need that. The installer is going to want to look at your panel before they get started so that they understand what kind of system they're operating on. And then the nice part about joining the co-op is that you actually get a package of plain language. It tells you, you know, if you need an electric panel upgrade, here is what that's going to cost you. That way, you know, at the 11th hour, there aren't any surprise costs to you. So when people are talking about their solar systems, sometimes they'll say, you know, actually, I think somebody in the chat said this. It was Anastasia. Yeah, you said you have 41 panels, which is awesome. It's huge. You know, it can be really nice to think about it in terms of size of the system. So instead of number of panels, so each panel has a different wattage, kind of the way that a light bulb does. So we talk about it in terms of kilowatts, so 1,000 watts. In the example at the bottom, you actually have 12 panels. Now each of these panels is 350 watts. So the array itself is a 4.2 kilowatt array. And then that is to scale. You can see the man off to the left. So most solar panels are about 3.5 feet wide by 5.5 feet tall, and they weigh about 40 pounds. So a watt is a measure of power. And if you extend power over time, you have a kilowatt hour, and that is energy. So this is your electricity production is a kilowatt hour, and that's probably a unit you're used to seeing on your electric bill. And then just for reference, you know, the bottom is a 4.2 kilowatt array. The average size system that we see with the co-ops, so I see the 6 to 7 kilowatt size. That may be the number that is true for Ohio. Is that right, Mariah? 6 to 7 kilowatts?
Yes, that is typically our average.
Okay. In Pennsylvania, for some reason, it's closer to 10 kilowatts. I'm not sure what it is for West Virginia. Yeah, but so you see it kind of varies location to location. But that number is also going to be highly dependent on you, on the amount of roof space you have, the amount of ground space you have, your budget. And if you want to cover 100% of your annual energy usage, you could absolutely choose to just cover 50%. That would be totally valid. So at this point, it's good to kind of talk through what your whole system does. So you can see from the power line all the way to the right that this is still a grid tied home. We are still seeing that be the most common and cost-effective way of going solar. So for this home, in this example, you know, on a bright sunny day like today, your solar panels are going to be absorbing sunlight and they're going to be generating direct current, DC. That will feed into your inverter, which will switch it to AC, alternating current. And then that feeds into your electric panel. So at this point, that energy is going to go into your home if it's got something that it wants to power. And if not, it will go to your now bi-directional meter. So it's measuring the amount of energy coming out of your home as well as going into your home. And at this point, it's going to feed any excess that you're producing that you're not using in your house. It's going to feed out to the grid. So it's helpful here to introduce the concept of net metering. So this is essentially a compensation mechanism that your utility is going to use to essentially pay you back for the solar that you produce, or, you know, show that there's a value to it. So if you overproduce on the month, then what happens is, if you overproduce on the month, what happens is your utility is going to take all of those extra kilowatt hours and put them towards a bank. And you're going to bank, in most cases, I think that there are some exceptions. In most cases, you're going to bank month to month. And then, so in the summer, when you're really overproducing, you're going to continuously bank, and it rolls over. By the winter, when it's, you know, dark out, it's just not seeing as much sunlight, then you're going to be spending down your bank. So if you were to size your system to offset 100% of your annual energy usage, after a full year, you would have spent nothing on energy except for the fixed energy cost from your utility. So net metering is a state-wide policy. I think in Ohio, it's utility to utility, and Mariah is going to talk about that. But so we have, I can tell you for Pennsylvania, it's a 1-to-1 kilowatt hour full retail rate. It is some of the best net metering in the country. We are ridiculously proud of it. It is, however, only offered by the major IOUs, investor-owned utilities. So if you're from Pennsylvania, you must be on default service in order to be net metered at the full retail rate. If you have an alternate energy provider, then you're going to have to switch back to default service. And this is a credit that you get on your bill. Like I said before, it rolls over month to month. So the billing year in Pennsylvania goes from June 1st to May 31st. At the end of the billing cycle, whatever is left in your bank of kilowatt hours, you get paid for those at the lower wholesale rate. So that's usually about a third of the retail rate. And in Pennsylvania, there is no cap for residential net metering. And in West Virginia, it's similar. So again, 1-to-1 kilowatt hour full retail rate required to be offered by investor-owned utilities, but also municipal utilities and rural electric cooperatives for systems that are under 25 kilowatts. So for most residential systems, that is going to be true. And then in this case, there is no billing year. So you're just going to have your excess generation roll over indefinitely, month to month. And then there is also in West Virginia something called aggregate virtual metering. So this is if you have, this is mostly true for farmers, sometimes for business owners. If you have 2 locations that you pay the electric bill for, and they're both within 2 miles of each other, and both meters are in your name, you can aggregate those bills and basically have solar on one site offset the bill for the other site. That's kind of a special situation. So if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. And then, I don't know, Mariah, did you want to talk about Ohio?
I don't think we have anybody on the call from Ohio,
Okay.
if I stand corrected. But ours is very similar to everybody else's, that we have one-to-one credits on generation. And like West Virginia, ours rolls forward indefinitely for AEP. That's not the case for some of the other companies, but I think everybody in that area would be AEP territory. So I don't have to cover Duke and First Energy and everyone for Ohio. But there's our Ohio rules. If you're joining us on the virtual recording, you can pause if you need to read Ohio's rules.
Perfect. So this is an example bill. This is a First Energy customer in Pennsylvania. So if you're in First Energy territory in either of the other states, you may have a bill that looks similar to this. So for this customer, this is first a bill that runs from February 11th to March 12th. So this is not, the sunniest of months. But this person coming into this bill had banked 1,135 kilowatt hours. Now, over the course of this billing month, they took from the grid 725 kilowatt hours, but sent out to the grid 718 kilowatt hours. So you can see that there is a net 7 kilowatt hours that they had to take from the grid that they weren't able to produce from their solar system. So their bank gets spent down by 7 kilowatt hours. So now they're left with a net of 1,128 kilowatt hours. So at the beginning of this billing period, they would have been charged about $100. So you can see that all the way at the bottom. But that entire bill goes away. And all they're left with is that fixed customer charge, that 10, it actually got reduced even further. So it's going to be 1038. And for different utilities, that fixed charge looks a little bit different. You typically see it between $10 and $25. That doesn't go away, but the rest of the bill does. So when we talk about solar being a good return on your investment or being able to pay itself off, this is what we're talking about. And then the last thing I'm going to cover is something called a consumption meter. So in thinking about net metering and making sure that your utility is net metering you correctly and that you're being compensated for every last kilowatt hour that you generate, you are going to need extra pieces of information than what's on your bill. So your bill is only going to show you what that 2-directional meter gets, which is energy from the grid to your house and energy from your house to the grid. But you also need to understand how much energy your solar system's producing, as well as how much energy your house is actually using. So here we have this consumption monitor that's going to look at your house consumption as well as your solar production. And it's through this complete system that you get a full picture of your solar system and your net metering. So this is actually a photo from Mariah's solar system. So that is the consumption monitor that you can see circled in yellow, added right to her electric panel. And then, and so I guess I should say the cost of the consumption meter, we see it typically is around $200 to $600 per installation. So Mariah mentioned that hers was just automatically installed with her inverter. So it does vary, but it's something that's worth asking about when you talk to your installer. So this is an example of the monitoring software for your consumption. So in that top left figure, you can see in blue, that's their solar production throughout the day. So it kind of follows the sun rising and the sun setting. And then in orange is their actual energy usage within the house. So there's overlap for a little bit between about like 1:30 and 6. And so you can see that they're going to be using what their system is generating. But then after the sun goes down and they're, still using power, that's going to be pulling from the grid. But then you can also see all of that blue before they actually start using power in the house. That is going to be net metered. That's going straight out to the grid and they're going to get compensated for it. And so that bottom left figure is the inside of the inverter, of Mariah's inverter. She pulled it apart for us today. Thank you, Mariah. and so in yellow is circled the actual consumption monitor that was built into the inverter. And then, like I told you before, your inverter is great because it's going to connect to the internet, allow you to see your production kind of on a day-to-day basis. So off to the right is the software that you're going to be able to see. And in this case, it's the amount of energy that the system is producing, the amount that Mariah is consuming, and then its interaction with the grid. So this complete picture is really helpful in making sure that you're being compensated correctly for your solar production.
I will specify that I do not recommend most people rip their equipment apart. I happen to be married to an electrical engineer, so he's kind of equipped to handle those higher power loads and knows what to touch and what not to touch. So that's not something that I recommend most people disassemble themselves. But something that you might want to think about for whenever your power does go off. So whenever it goes out, the grid shuts down and there are safety mechanisms in place in the systems so that your house isolates. And in order to have those isolation systems, you have to have a transfer switch. To get the transfer switches, you usually have to pick up a battery or there is an inverter called the Enphase IQ8, which some of the installers might be offering. That's always something you can ask about. So with either of those two things, though, what it does is make it so that your house is not continuing to push power out to the grid because those linemen are not expecting there to be energy on that grid whenever the grid is down. And, no matter how we might feel about those monopoly utilities, we don't mind those linemen in the end because they're our neighbors and our friends, and we don't want to see them get fried. So some of you might have been all too familiar with these pictures that you're seeing here, which were taken last June, whenever the giant storms rolled through and the transmission lines were damaged. And then the following week, we were at peak consumption for our region with the heat wave that we experienced. So whenever those power, grids started to fall and they weren't able to supply everything and they started turning things off to protect the grid and have to work on it to restore the grid, we noticed that it took 5 days, 7 days, 10 days in some cases. So we got all too used to watching the news or listening to the news or catching it in the newspaper or from our friends telling us how long we were going to be without power. But if you have one of these, devices on your system so that your home can isolate and use that energy during the day, or if you have batteries, it can use it overnight, you're still able to take advantage of having solar. So some of the values of battery storage, if you're having an area that does have those frequent outages, maybe you've got a lot of trees in your area that like to lose branches during storms and take it down. Or if you, live somewhere that has a high grid load and you know that it's more and more frequently starting to have outages, that might be a reason you'd like to have battery storage to back it up. If you have critical loads at home, maybe grandma's on oxygen, you don't want her to turn off every time the power goes down. You have a well pump, you have a sump pump. That's what we have in our basement that caused us to pick up a battery backup, because every time it would even think about raining, our basement would get damp, and we didn't want to chance that that was able to happen because of a power outage. Or maybe you're just disaster preparedness minded. Maybe you're worried about zombies. We can help you get ready for whatever it is with some battery storage to help you out. And then in places like California, we're starting to see where during peak demand, they'll actually buy power from those batteries from people. So you would have the opportunity to make extra money during those peak demand hours. That isn't in our region yet, but I would say that at some point, everybody's going to see things like that be available. If you're interested in more information on battery storage, that is at solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. And if you don't catch that address or you forget it, we've got one of those handy dandy little, magnifying glasses, the search bar on our website. You can type in battery, storage, backup, any number of keywords like that, and it'll find that and many other resources for you. And then another optional component in this solar co-op that we're offering is EV charging. And I know you might be thinking, I don't have an EV yet. I'm not planning on getting an EV. Well, let me tell you about this great little outlet that you can have added. So the one in the top picture there, that is a NEMA 1450. That is just a style of outlet that gives you 240 volts worth of power on a 50 amp circuit. That works for things like a smoker or a welder or an RV. So that gives you that extra, outlet available for those. And in my case, this is my little outlet box on the side of my house. I didn't have any way to plug in Christmas lights on the far side of my house. So I opted for this one that had both the NEMA 1450 and a standard outlet. And that way at Christmas, I can plug in lights, on the east or the west side of my house, because I don't just have to run a cord from my porch anymore. I've got one on the far side of the garage. So that way I have power more accessible. So it can be good, even if you're not planning an EV in the near future, to opt for an outlet to be installed. You've already got the electrician there. You're going to be able to take that tax credit off of that installation as well. So you might as well, do it while you've got the discounts available versus thinking about it later and having to pay more to get those electricians back out there. Those are some of the higher paid guys that you can have to have out to your house for service. So take advantage of them whenever you've got them there. And if you are looking for an EV charger itself, the little one down below is an example of a hardwired unit that'll deliver up to 6.6 kilowatts to your car very easily so that you can have that hardwired ability. If you're wanting it inside of a garage or outside, they have weatherproof editions of them. So those are things to consider. Now we're going to peek into some solar economics.
Thanks, Mariah. So thinking about the cost of solar, it's dropped astronomically since it was first brought to the market. You can see there the 1970s. And even just within the last decade, the cost has dropped by about 73%. So solar is really becoming something that's more available to everybody. It is not just for like homes in that fancy neighborhood. It is truly available to so many people now. It has, like we were talking about before, an excellent return on your investment. And the federal tax credit for solar is 30%. And we're going to talk about what that really means. But that was just extended last year all the way out to 2032. There are very few things with that kind of certainty in the US government. So take it while you can get it. So in thinking about the solar co-op and how, this group buy model can help you save money on solar, the reason that that's true is because of how we break down the cost of solar. So in the yellow is system components. So these are all the physical pieces of solar. So it's the panels, the inverters, racking, all of that. And that has largely leveled out, just kind of marginal decreases in costs within the past 7 or so years. Labor costs likewise have been coming down since 2010, largely leveled out at this point. But that last bit, soft costs, have actually been increasing since about 2013. And they actually comprise more than 50% of the total cost of going solar. So soft costs is everything else. It is the cost of permits and applications. On the installer side, it's the cost of marketing and customer acquisition. So if you think about how a solar co-op works, we take this large group of educated, interested homeowners to an installer, and that means that they're able to save money on marketing and customer acquisition, pass those savings along to you. So while we can't guarantee an exact amount that anybody is going to save on solar by going through the co-op, that's because, you know, we don't choose the installer and we don't know how installers are going to bid. But across all of Sun's co-ops nationwide, we see on average that co-op members save between 10 and 15% relative to market rate customers. So here is an example of pricing. So I think we mostly have West Virginia folks here tonight. So I'm not sure what size system for you guys is average. So we're going to talk through both the 5 kW and the 10 kW system. I think maybe the 5 is going to be closer to average for you. But so here we have some pricing examples for co-op members. And so the average solar co-op price is about $3 per watt. That is all inclusive. So that's the cost of materials, the labor, permitting, almost all of it. And so for a 5 kilowatt system, you're looking at a ticket price of about $15,000. And then if you're able to take the federal tax credit, so this is going to be 30% of the cost of going solar. So in this case, you're going to get to take out about $4,500 so that your net cost is $10,500. And it is worth noting that all of these numbers scale. So if you're looking at the 10 kilowatt system, it is twice that. So that's really nice for kind of accounting for the size of your system in your head. So in that first year, as we showed you the example of the bill earlier, you're going to be saving. And for that 5 kilowatt system, you'll save on the whole year about $800. Now that is going to continue to accumulate over the lifetime of your system. And yes, your solar panels are going to become slightly less efficient over time, but the cost of electricity is also going to be increasing over time. Last year was ridiculous. It is not going to get better. So you are looking at increased savings over the lifetime of your system. So by year 25, you are looking at saving twice what you spent on the system for an overall net profit, in this case of almost $14,000, and that's all in electricity savings. So thinking about the federal tax credit, like I said, it was passed last year. It is good through 2032, so you have plenty of time to use it. After that, it is going to start to decrease. So this is a tax credit. It is non-refundable for homeowners, but essentially what it means is if you go solar this year, next year when you file your taxes, you'll be able to take off 30% of the total cost of your solar system. This would include batteries if you get batteries. If you were to get batteries without solar, you would still be able to get the 30% tax credit. It's really great. And then I haven't looked recently, but EV chargers have their own incentives associated with them. I'm not sure if we actually included those slides, Mariah, but we do have information about EV charger incentives on our website.
I don't think we have them included in this,
Okay.
but if you have all of those pieces in your overall bill total, where you buy it all at once, it automatically does the 30%, which is matching across. So kind of handy to not be able to have to file multiple times for all the pieces. So
yeah, that's awesome. But so, you know, it is a federal income-based tax credit. So if you don't have the income or the tax appetite to file the full 30% this year, it does roll over. And so you can take part of it year over year, but we do recommend that you talk to a tax professional about how the tax credit applies to your specific financial situation. Mariah and I are not tax experts. Please do not ask us more specific questions. Okay, so There are a few different ways that you can pay for a solar system. The first is going to be the cash option. So this is the highest upfront cost, but at day one, it's just savings. So that's fantastic if you can afford it. Secondly, so there is a grant program that's called the Rural Energy for America program, and it is funded through the USDA, Department of Agriculture. And it's essentially grant funding for farmers and for small businesses in rural areas. So I think most everybody in the co-op is going to be covered by that. But so we did release a new REAP guide. So if you're interested in finding out more about that program or how to apply, definitely check out the guide on our website. And then for loans, the most common way that we see people finance a solar system is by opening a home equity line of credit. But obviously there are other ways, other types of loans that you could get to pay for solar. And then it's important to note that most often installers offer their own financing through a third-party financing company. And then you as a Solar United Neighbors co-op member, you would have access to some really good low fee, low interest loans through the Clean Energy Credit Union and the Community First Credit Union that you wouldn't have access to if you weren't a co-op member. And then Mariah, do you want to talk about that last bullet point?
Yep, I'll just quickly mention it in case anybody from Ohio is watching the recording. So there is something called the EcoLink loan here in the state of Ohio, and it basically knocks 3 points off of your loan cost if you go through the EcoLink program. So it's well worth looking into. The last time I looked, it was taking, those 7% interest loans down to 4%, and it was keeping them at that 4% for like the first 5 years of the loan term. So it's a really good program, and it doesn't add it back on at the end or anything. It just helps to lower the cost for those first 5 years.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I think we have an example of financing. So this is for the same two systems that we showed you before. So that previous chart was for the cash option. So this is going to be for your 5 kilowatt system and your 10 kilowatt system. And then what we're looking at is a 10-year loan and a 15-year loan for both of those. And we did the calculation at a 4% interest rate as well as a 7% interest rate, just so that you could kind of get an idea of what these numbers are going to look like. So for the top kind of half is at the 4% interest rate. And there is a situation where, oh no, not this example, but in this case, you're actually going to be paying more than you're saving per month in each of these situations. At the end, your net profits are going to be slightly better for the shorter term loan. That's standard. And you can see that reflected in the 7% interest rate example at the bottom too. I think something that is important to point out is that in any situation when you're financing, your net profit is going to be less than if you paid with the cash option. That's just always going to be true. It's just a matter of figuring out what terms are going to be bearable for you month to month, and what's going to maximize your net profit given those terms. And then, like I was saying before, we have the Rural Energy for America program guide. I see Mariah put the link to that in the chat. But so this is for farmers and small businesses in rural areas. Farmers can be anywhere, and the grant can cover up to 50% of the total cost of your system if you go solar. And there is also a loan program, but the grant program is what we kind of outline in the guide, as well as how to apply. And this is an area of work that we are rapidly expanding at Sun. So if this is something that you're interested in, please do reach out and let us know so that we can help you in any way we can. Okay, and so just wrapping up. So this is the web page for the solar co-op. So, you know, we hope that after this meeting, you will think that solar is a good option for you and that now is a good time and you're interested in learning more. So we hope that you will join the co-op, and you can do that at solarunitedneighbors.org/Ohio Valley. And you will click that orange button that's kind of in the center of the page that says join the co-op. If you're here tonight, you haven't necessarily signed up for the co-op yet. So if you haven't seen this page and you are interested in joining, definitely get to that orange button, join us. We would love to share information with you. And this co-op is going to be open until the end of October to new members. Okay, and so like Mariah was saying at the beginning, you know, it is really important to have a large group. This is going to incentivize installers to bid more competitively, which means that you get to save more money when you go solar. So we ask that if you can, that you help us spread the word about the solar co-op. So Mariah launched a poll that everybody should be able to see. If you just let us know, you know, some of these ways that you can kind of help us spread the word are very low lifts. It's very easy. It's a yard sign or sharing. We're going to email out this webinar recording, you know, and it's just forwarding it along to somebody else. But if you have social media, that's a really great way to share information, or even just like talking to a friend or a family member the next time you see them. If there's somebody who's complained about their utility bills, they might be interested in solar. So I see that a few of you have answered, and I really appreciate that. I'm just going to leave it up for another second. But if you respond, we will get in touch with you to find ways to help you spread the word. Okay, so I'm going to end it here. Thank you, Mariah. Okay, and I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I see a question from Anastasia. So can you please touch on how to apply for the solar credit? Yeah, so actually, Mariah, you've done this. Do you want to talk about it and what it looks like for you?
Yeah, so I'm wondering, so she's saying stock like thing after that. Are you talking about SREX?
Oh, the SREX.
I'm just debating. So if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
talking about, if you're
Okay.
talking about the tax credit, it's like Form 8911. It's pretty simple. It's in most of the major tax programs too. So that one's pretty easy. But if you're talking about SREX, I don't even recommend them in Ohio because we have such a low valuation of them that it costs more per year in fees than people make. So I'm probably not the best candidate to speak about those. Do SREX work better in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, they do for sure. So, but I think Anastasia, you're in West Virginia. Yeah, so the SREC market in Pennsylvania is up to between $40 and $45 per SREC. I think for Ohio, it's down around like $7.
I think it was at like 4 something the last time I
Okay.
checked. So I have a large system. I have a 13.4 kilowatt array. And so even with as much overage as I make per year, I would not break even on the $50 fee that it takes usually to trade. So it didn't make sense to me to register. So I don't typically cover those. I don't know what our West Virginia rules are for it.
I'm
That's
not
definitely something we can follow up with.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we do have on our website, I'm trying to find it. We do have information about how to register your SRECs with, you can either sell them yourself or you can sell them through like a trade advisor. And so I think it's called Knollwood Energy. I'm going to put it in the chat. Knollwood Energy is one of those traders. And then there's another one that we have, Soul Systems. So if you go through Soul Systems, Sun has an agreement with them that it reduces your fees. You get discounted pricing through it. But I'm going to include this page that has a lot more information about the different ways, kind of the pros and cons of the different ways that you can register and sell your SRECs. And then it does include some of those traders that you can get access to.
Yeah, SREC Trade is another one that Solar United Neighbors members, which you automatically are just by like attending things like this tonight or joining the co-op. SREC Trade is another one that it gets you access to that. But the pricing varies from state to state. So we'll make sure that we know next time what they're worth in West Virginia. This is both of our first times through this full presentation for all 3 states, and we obviously focus more on our own states typically in programs.
Are there any other questions before we hop off? Okay, well, I'm not seeing any, but I thank you all so much for coming out on a Tuesday night. We will be in touch with you with the recording of this webinar and with ways that we can get you some yard signs and some other materials if that's helpful to you. But thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for
Mariah.
joining us. Yeah, it's been fun.
Sorry all about the internet outage, but hope you all have a good night. Thanks.